But I remember playing the Bluebird one night, and this lady came up to me and she said, "You probably don't want to hear this, but if you'll ever write a song about grief, it'll be one of your biggest hits." The other thing she said was, "You're going to have a big hit, but it's not going to be here. And there's a lot of sunshine on it. It's going to be like on a coast."
And that was the climb.
The climb. So that, I feel like that was an angel.
Okay, so you gotta tell the climb story and then the I Drive Your Truck story, which are both,
Yes.
I mean, songwriter stories are one thing and we all tell them, but man, those are both.
Well, and they tie in so much.
Yeah, because it is your story.
Welcome to the Good Grief, Good God Show, hosted by Grammy nominee and Emmy award-winning hit songwriter Brad Warren of the Warren Brothers. Join Brad monthly on the first and third Tuesdays in audio or on YouTube for raw, honest conversation about surviving things that suck. For today's episode, Brad welcomes 2024's Music Rose Female Songwriter of the Year and CMA and ACM award-winning singer-songwriter Jessi Alexander. Jessi's songs have been recorded by some of music's biggest stars, including Tim McGraw, Celine Dion, Miranda Lambert, Miley Cyrus, Blake Shelton, and Trisha Yearwood. Her works include Lee Brice's hit I Drive Your Truck, which won both the CMA and ACM Song of the Year. Her latest album, Decatur County Red, released in 2020, captures her most authentic self, reflecting on her Tennessee roots and life journey. Topics she will explore with Brad in this episode. And lastly, Jessi is married to Grammy, ACM, CMA award-winning singer, songwriter, and producer John Randall. I'm producer Matt Pt2. To learn more about today's guest, Brad, and the show, check the description where you'll find clickable links to access this episode's audio and video links, to connect to the show on social media, and to visit goodgriefgoodgodshow.com. On the behalf of Brad's wife and executive producer, Michelle Warren, and segment producer and guest booker, Lisa Bolton, thank you for tuning in. The Good Grief, Good God Show is brought to you loving memory of Sage Michael Warren.
We knew the end was near, and you kind of can't make this stuff up, but my dad happened to be in a rehab facility in Nashville, which, he lives in West Tennessee, but he happened to be there he had been arrested and in and out of jail, but the only way he could stay out was if he went to this rehab. So it was really nice or not nice, but kind of crazy that my mom's dying and my dad's in this rehab, and it's like all this is going on. So I'm like, okay, I'm dealing with him, dealing with her. And she, and like I said, me and JR are just starting to be together, which was awesome. But those last couple days, I'm kind of back and forth and trying to be present for her and wanting to be there. And Life Hospice had told me, look, you might not be there. Some patients, they want to go on their own. Some patients want you to be there. But I felt like the end was near, and I raised all the windows, and I was, just like lit candles, just trying to just do something. I don't know. You just feel like I want to do something to help make this special for her. And I'd, sang to her. I'd talked to her. She'd been gone mentally for 3 or 4 days. But, when someone's dying, they'll kind of have like a rush of energy will come back, or like we'd ridden all those waves, and they told me like, that's probably going to happen. It's normal. But I tell the story because this is like the worst thing that could ever happen. The worst moment. Is that the question? The worst moment?
Well, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you?
And
then what's the best thing that came out of that?
Yes. So the worst thing that ever happened was the moment she passed. I was sitting right there, and I can just remember those last breaths. You're like, is that the one, And she took it, and then I remember wanting to know what time it was. So I looked at the time, and I was like, okay, it's whatever, 11:32. But when I looked back, it was like, not my mom, in the best way. It was like shocking. It was like whatever faith I had was tripled. She wasn't my mom. I can't even explain it. Listen to Jimmy, at least let's talk about heaven. It's like, what a gift. I mean, I haven't had the near death, but I saw death and life, or I saw life go to death so quickly. Like when I say to you, when I looked over there for 1 second and when I looked back, it was like the most shocking shock of my life. Like, you're not my mom. Like, my mom's gone. Poof.
And you knew.
And I also was like, I felt this wave of like great gratitude, a glimpse of heaven. Like, wow.
And you felt peace. And you shouldn't have felt peace. Like,
so
instead of
much peace.
Yeah.
She was, I've never shared this, but so much peace that 2 days later, when they nickel and diming us over the casket and the all the funeral arrangements, and I'm having to do all this, and they're like, well, it's this much for this and this much for this. And they were like, it's this much for hair and makeup. I was like, hair and makeup. I was like, I'll do the hair and makeup. That's how crazy.
No
she
way.
was not my mom. That body in front of me that quickly.
It's not, yeah.
And that I was able to do that I still can't believe I did it. I still can't believe I walked in that funeral home and did my own mom's hair and makeup, whatever.
You're a tough cookie.
But it's only because of the reality I saw. You wouldn't have thought anything of it either if you'd seen what I saw. Because I swear to you, I looked at my mom, I looked away, and I looked back, and she was gone. Like that. And whatever faith I had, like I said, was just, it just rained over me, the faith that I have today.
I have a tattoo that says, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. That's, it's scriptural, but that is absolutely, there's a moment.
That was
and I didn't see the moment there, but I told my friend Eric Close.
Yeah.
Was on, and his brother died after Sage. And, I just went in and touched him.
Yeah.
And it was like, he was there. It was such a transitional thing. It was so, I'm first of all, I'm one of the most like realistic. God told me to do this and God told me to do that. Not that guy. And so I'm the guy to call BS on things. Right. So typically historically would be, which maybe is why I'm in this position as a messenger of the idea that when Sage died, I immediately knew he was with my father. Now I have no idea. Why. I mean, it hit me. I mean, maybe that's the closest other person to me that's died. But I immediately had the comfort. Comfort is a weird word for that, but the comfort and that he's with my dad right now. I mean, I just knew it's the first thing that came up. Not how did this happen? Not what's the purpose? Not who can I blame? Not be angry at God. Not whatever it was that would have. Not screaming, yelling. In fact, I didn't even cry until Michelle came in and we went and she laid down by his body. And I'm like, I don't know if I would have gone and looked. Women are so much stronger than men in everything but physicality, everything else. But it's a good thing we can beat you guys in arm wrestling, because otherwise we would be a chocolate mess.
Yeah.
But that knowledge of him being with my father, and that literally there's a comfort there. It's never left me in 4 years. So for all the hole in my heart and for all the things that are worse and the things that are better, all of those things being said, I've never lost that comfort, and that there's the knowing. And it's so funny. It means so much more to me now that when we wrote several times, we played several gigs together in the months after Sage died. It was very comfortable. Like I was like, oh, Jessi's going to be there. It's like literally there's a few people, there's just it never left you, whatever that was. It's like, it doesn't mean that you don't have bad days and that you don't have bad hair days and you're stressed out and you have headaches and whatever's going to happen. Yeah. But there's somewhere at the bottom of all that, there's a piece that just doesn't really go away.
And the hard part was like, that was a beautiful moment that I had. But then it was like the real work began though. Cause even though I had the spiritual knowledge of my mom, like, is fine. Like I knew, I was like, not only she feels so much better, but like, it was almost like, you idiot, she isn't this body. That's the feeling I got from God was like, it's not the flesh, Jessi. It's not the flesh. You already know this. It was like, I already knew that, but to literally see it is pretty incredible. But the real work began was, you can't unsee things. You can't unhear things. And that's where the real grief for me was, not so much her passing, because I felt good about that, but just the nightmares. I don't know if y'all dealt with that, but I would be okay during the day and I'd go to sleep. And that was And through grief counseling, the early years of grief counseling, they would say that's just you couldn't physically understand what was happening, and your mind is just trying to relive it to try to understand it. It's just like it was information coming at you. And so the first 6 months of grief counseling through a live hospice, that was like the nightmares, the waking up every nightmare seemed to be in the hospital.
Wow.
Fighting with a doctor. Why do we not have her medicine? The IV drip bell going off, the fighting for a nurse to get her attention, all the fight. It was like a battle. So that's why I feel like some of my anger was like, why do I have to do, she gets the reward, like we went through this together, and I'm the one that's.
She's good and I'm not, and I'm young and I need her. And yeah.
It's
a lot to deal with when you're that age. I mean, I'm thank God I was in recovery and I don't even just mean sober. I'm so grateful for the ailment because of being able to, but waking up was the hardest part. Like every morning.
The acknowledgement.
Oh shit, this wasn't a dream. This is real.
This is real. Gotta live all this. Yeah.
Oh God, this is real. Every morning for 6 months.
Oof.
This is, and those having to start every day from ground zero.
Yeah, start
with no equity from the days before of faith that you had.
Yeah. Feeling like you're not making, that's the thing about grief. Like,
the progress goes back to zero at night.
You would even think there would be the months that I was like, oh, I'm really, I'm good. And then you just get hammered out of nowhere at a grocery store parking lot, or like literally it was never for me in the work, because I'm really good at doing that. It was just the most random times that I would get hammered and waylaid. And then as I'm trying to I want to get married. Well, how's that going to be? Well,
my mom's not going to be there.
My mom's not going to be there. How am I supposed to do this? But I remember playing the Bluebird one night, and this lady came up to me and she said, you probably don't want to hear this, but I'm a soul reader and I've got a bunch of stuff I'd love to tell you. And typically I'm like you, I don't love the whole ending meet and greet necessarily, but she intrigued me. And she held my hands and she said, if you'll ever write a song about your mom or about grief, it'll be one of your biggest hits. And I was like, well, that's probably never going to happen. I'm probably never going to write one of those because I don't even go there. I shut the door, locked the door and walked away. And I'll write about anything else but that. But that was in 2000, probably 5. And I wrote I Drive Your Truck in 2000, 13 or whatever. And I knew when they brought me that title that was it, what she meant. I knew it that day. I was like, this is the one. I was like, this is the song that lady said. She also told me, because I had not, in 2005, I was washed up artist and didn't even have a publishing deal probably. And she said, the other thing she said was, you're going to have a big hit, but it's not going to be here. And there's a lot of sunshine on it. It's going to be like on a coast. And I'm like, well, okay. I'd not been to California yet. I didn't know what she meant, but
and that was the climb.
The climb.
So
that I feel like that was an angel.
Okay, so you gotta tell the climb story and then the I Drive Your Truck story, which are both. Yes. I mean, songwriter stories are one thing, and we all tell them, but man, those are both.
Well, and they tie in so much.
Yeah, because it is your story, which is
yeah. Well, the climb is definitely a song out of just sheer, I've lived all those words. I'd written a million songs before that. People always say, did you know when you wrote The Climb that was going to be a 17-week number one? It's like,
that was your first hit, right?
Yeah, it was my first hit.
That's the way to come out of the box, huh?
And I was like, no, I don't think but it was like, I remember when my mentors said, you had been swinging the bat for so long, your arm was so strong that when the ball hit the bat, it went over the fence and then some.
Such a great analogy. Exactly.
I had been swinging for a long, long time and had a lot of misses. And so the lyric it's great. It's crazy how God uses, almost had to write the frustration of it being a 10-year town. And it had been almost 10 years to the day that I moved to Nashville. Finally, I'm frustrated. By this point, me and JR are getting married. You want to start having kids. And I start thinking, JR, my husband wrote Whiskey Lullaby. He's doing so good. And I was like, kind of thinking I might be good with just being a mom. I want to be a mom. I want to give a family the life I didn't have. I want to, I want to get married. I want to have kids. And he was doing so well that I was like, I think I'm good. And so when I wrote The Climb, it was not thinking, oh yeah, this is going to go do something. It was just another song. But I did pour out the frustration. Me and John Mabe were both underdogs. My co-writer, we're both underdogs. And when we wrote it, we just thought, that's it. And we turned it in and didn't think anything of it. And then when they were coming to make the Hannah Montana movie, my awesome publisher, Lisa Ramsey at the time, she found out they were making a Hannah Montana movie in Nashville, but you're not going to use any of the Nashville songwriters. She was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And so she was clever and found the director of the movie, Peter Chisholm, who is awesome. And he came here and she was like, we're just going to invite him over for a guitar pull, a Nashville guitar pull. And he came over, and me and Philip White and Mark Nessler, all my other songwriters at the publishing company, we played him songs, and he was like, I love your voice. And I was like, thank you so much. He goes, do you have other songs just on tape? So I just want to hear your voice. I love it so much. And I said, well, yeah, I'm sure I've got something. So I'm like thinking, this is my moment to pitch to this movie. Even though I don't have kids yet, I don't know who Hannah Montana is. I don't know anything. I've not watched Disney a day in my life.
You're certainly not thinking 17-week number one.
No, I'm just thinking, well, this guy's a film director. Maybe he'll make another movie and use some of my songs for that. And so I'm looking at Lisa and I'm like, what are we going to put on the CD? I was like, what do I have? What do I have? What do I have? And she was like, we have that song. It's The Climb. And it was like a more spiritual song about frustration in the music business, And I was like, well, but I am singing it.
Surely this 10-year-old girl will relate to this song.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
For all the struggling she's done.
Totally. And I'm like, we've got John Mabe singing, got my version. Like, let's just put them both on there. And like a couple days later, he calls and he said, darling, he's British voice. He said, if you'll rewrite this lyric, it's perfect for the Hannah Montana movie. And I'm like, whatever, this guy doesn't realize that that's not going to happen. I mean, there's bigger songwriters, there's bigger this is like Disney motion pictures, and it was just a God thing. I really believe it was meant to be, because if that song hadn't happened, I don't know that I'd have continued on. I'd given it 10 years.
I mean,
yeah,
it is just amazing. The tiny little sliding door turns.
Tiny.
You just never know.
Yeah. Me putting that song on that CD. And also finding I was pregnant during this whole process, by this time we're married. And
by the way, if you ever get pregnant again, I'm writing songs.
We're writing songs.
You kill it when you're pregnant.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we definitely got to watch, I got to watch all my dreams come true, like being a mom and having The Climb happen at the same exact time. I'm literally in the hospital, delivering after her delivery, and Miley Cyrus is playing at President Obama's inauguration. That was happening literally that day. It was the craziest, most surreal, exciting thing that ever happened.
How far does that, because I know as you get older, everything compresses and you try to live on a 5, but how far does that go from the darkness of sadness of childhood? And then is there anyone that at that moment could have understood? You don't understand that both of the things I wanted most in life are happening right now.
Yeah.
I have a husband who I love. I'm getting ready to have a child. I have a hit song all the time. I get to be a mother. It's
the only best way to say surreal, because you feel like you're destined for a certain life. Like your just destiny is supposed to be this. But for me, it's always been God's pulling out all these other, pull this, have that, this, a lot of it's hard work too, a lot of his grit and grind and
all the spiritual talk. And the truth is life is hard work. Everything that we do, we get what we put into something.
Yeah.
I saw this thing at the gym the other day. Fitness is I love fitness because it's subjective. You get exactly what you put in. Yeah. And so none of this is to be said that God decided that you were going to be a great songwriter and change the world.
Yeah.
It was work that you had to put in.
It took that and my work ethic.
He was holding our hand.
Absolutely.
We get to walk whichever way we want. We're all allowed to walk down whichever path we are.
Totally.
It's just, I think sometimes he may kind of like, if we feel the nudge
that's right.
to go this direction, go that direction. And the older, more spiritual, wiser, hopefully, that we get, we walk that direction without quite so much coaxing.
Absolutely.
Whereas usually I was knocking his hand away from mine and,
I think that's when like a lot of more, wiser spiritual people would be like, oh, Jessi, you just got to see God's, gifts at work or God, whatever. For me, it was just so, like crazy big things can happen. And that little voice that I talked about earlier, that gotcha, I've got you. I've got you. That was whispered. Oh, and still whispered like, doubt. So I remember one time I was playing I Drive Your Truck and I felt my granddaddy's presence and I felt that same like, see, I got you, you lived all this for a reason.
And he got you if you would become a waitress at Piggly Wiggly too.
Yeah.
He does. He has us.
Yeah.
And it's not that our dreams are and I always try to instill in my boys that life's a competition with you.
Right.
Not with everyone else.
Totally.
Block out what one of them was asking me about financial, like, I just want to make sure I make enough money when I'm older.
Right,
like, first of all, you're 19, you like to work, you're ahead of most of the people in your generation, you're fine.
Yeah.
But I said, the number one thing you have to do to be financially successful is not care what other people think.
Yeah.
If you don't care what other people think,
you're good.
You're good.
It's your life.
You live in America.
Yeah.
This is impossible to starve here unless you're trying to. It's just not that big of a worry. It's God will walk with us through whatever path we take.
Right.
But we decide the path.
Absolutely. And there's days like when Connie brought up the title, I Drive Your Truck, that I could have easily been like, oh, nope, not going to do that. I'm going to change the subject. That was one worth opening
the box for. Good for you.
I'm going to change the subject, which I had probably done before. I had probably for years done that.
That's a good title, but we're going to make this not so sad.
Yeah, but I can remember that day being like, gut punch. This is it. This is the song. This is the song I'm supposed to write. Now, I didn't know that it would be Song of the Year, going to do what it did.
Tell me the whole thing, because she called you and said, I just heard this on NPR.
She's a scavenger for ideas. She's what all of us yearn for, is that person that walks in with this $1 million idea.
She always has.
She always does. Yes. So, and Connie's, very sensitive and does a lot. She's so cute because she'll come in with all her Post-it notes and all her research. And she kept throwing out titles. And every time she'd get to this one Post-it note, she'd start to tell me the story, but start bawling. And she would never tell me the hook. She would do this guy, he lost his son in Afghanistan. And the interviewer asked him what he was going to do on Memorial Day. And then she would just start crying. She couldn't say it.
Couldn't get to it. Wow.
And so I'd be like, she kept trying to change the subject, tell me these other titles. She's like, I can't do it today. I was like, well, I'm doing it today. So you're just going to go ahead. The second that she said truck, I immediately flashed to Jackson, my granddaddy's truck, who my grandmother kept parked. Part of her grief probably was she kept, some parents probably keep their children's room in mint condition. And I don't know how y'all did or what y'all did with Sage, but like for my grandmother, it was like she kept my granddaddy's truck parked and like no one could touch it. No one could drive it. It was there. And it was like a time capsule for her. She probably could sit in it. And there's granddaddy's coffee cup from that morning. And there's his tool belt. He was a carpenter. So anyway, I can remember when I would go back to see her, I would go get in the truck and I could just like literally smell him, see him, feel him. Everything was there. The radio, the ashtray. So when she said truck, I was like, boom, granddaddy's truck. I know exactly the truck. And so anyway.
Smelled it. I can smell it in the song.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. And so, but basically the interviewer asked, the guy, he was Paul Monty is his name. He was trying to place flags on his son's grave. And he said, what are you going to do to honor your son today? And he just said, I'm just going to drive his truck. So that's what Connie brought me. That's what she had. And I was just like, whew, this is going to be hard, but we're going to write this. And that's when my creative brain and then my business brain went at work, because at that time, there just weren't a lot of females that were going to sing a song like that. And I was like, we're going to have to get a guy in here, first of all, because if I'm singing it, it's going to be hard to pitch. So we pulled in Jimmy Urey, he's a pretty
good singer,
incredible singer. And it was the perfect guy to bring. He had his truck, his story. He had a brother, all these things that made the ingredients of what became I Drive Your Truck. But there's so many parts of that song that I could, go, that's for my mom. That's for my, that's my granddaddy. That's the Flag and Stone, where I feel you anyway. And the bridge was because of an argument I'd had with Roger, like maybe a year before, when he was like, you never go to your mom's grave. Like, why do you never visit? And I remember saying, I just don't feel her there. That's not where she is for me.
Sage's headstone is not where we feel him.
Right.
We do occasionally go there, but it's not something. Okay, that line. There's so many that I give that, because I want you. There's more I got to ask you about that song. Yeah. But that song, when there's a new songwriter, and we publish a few guys along the way, whatever, and they want to know that, what's wrong with this song? Isn't it good? I go, listen to the first verse of I Drive Your Truck. I see change in the ashtray. I see it. I smell the seats and the sunshine coming through and that little bit of must. Yeah. Beyond the fact that the story is so well told, that is a perfectly crafted song. It absolutely is, written by three monsters with three, so it literally is. If someone asks me, what am I missing? I'm like, you're missing that furniture, that color.
Furniture.
What did Craig Wiseman had one of my favorite quotes ever. He told a songwriter, stop telling me how I feel, paint a picture and I'll decide how I feel.
Yes, absolutely.
The first times I heard I Drive Your Truck, I just thought, that's a really well-written song. Mm-hmm. And then I heard the stories behind it. And it gets better and better and better. As
everybody has their own truck or their car or their house.
Or bedroom.
It doesn't have to be this vehicle. And that's what I learned is that, wow, how cool. Here I get to write a song like this. A, it'd be cathartic for me, but B, get it to go on and be a part of the Gold Star families that have lost their family members and in the line of fire and thing. I got to know about Jared Monty, who we actually wrote the song for. That's Paul Monty's son. That's the son. Yeah. Yes. And so we got to find Paul. And
how did you find Paul Monty?
I know we just, no, it was like a needle, because when she heard the story, she didn't get a name or anything. She just heard a guy say that.
You wouldn't win an award and go, hey, if Paul Monty's out there, call us. We'd love to talk to you.
We were approaching the number one party, and we were like, there's no way we can have this award without finding the guy that said it. Because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have a song. So we called Lee Brice's people, publicists. I mean, everybody was looking, and it was hard. It was really hard to find it. And Connie, she said she just typed in a certain different search. She prayed and she said, God, just I'm going to type one more time into Google search. And she said it was weird. It was like she just said all the right words and boom. Not only did she find the NPR special, she saw a picture of Paul Monty and the truck.
Oh, wow.
And so I remember I was walking out of a grocery store and I get a picture and she goes, this is the truck. Come to my house right now. And so I went straight to Connie's house and we get Jimmy on the phone, because on the bottom of the picture also was like a 1-800, because he had a foundation. And, we find out Jared Monty, he was like awarded the Medal of Honor. Like there's a huge story to this guy. And this guy, Paul Monty, he's setting up a foundation to put flags on soldiers' graves. Like we find out this information. She's like, come over. We're calling the number right now. So great. So I go over. I mean, I'm shaking, literally shaking. Connie, we got Jimmy on. And there's a recording of this, but he's on speakerphone and we cold call this guy.
A 1-800 number?
1-800. Oh, yeah. And this guy answered. He's like, we're like, is Paul Monty there? And he's like, well, no, but and he's got a Boston accent. This is his brother. And we're like, well, we're trying to find him. well, we're actually at a barbecue. He's like, let me go get him. And
the 800 number is the brother's cell phone, which is amazing.
We're shaking. Paul gets on the phone and we're about to tell this man that we've written a song that's on the chart. He's probably heard. If he's a country fan, he's by sure heard this. And we're going to tell him that it's something he said is the reason we wrote the song.
And it's about his son.
And it's about his son who he'd lost. And we're just trying to say it. And make any sense.
Are you guys excited? Are you emotional?
We're emotional.
Both.
We're just a hot mess.
Yeah, just a hot, wow.
We're all just,
we've
been trying to find him for so long. And he's just like, what? We're like, we're Nashville songwriters. We're like, do you happen to know the song I Drive Your Truck? He goes, actually, yeah, I've heard it on the radio, but I've turned it off every time. I can't hear it.
Oh, wow.
And we're like,
that's crazy.
We're like, yeah, it was because you said that he starts telling us about Jared. And he's like, well, actually, my son was killed on the mountain that day. And he kept trying to go save this one guy. And we lost both him and that other guy. And that guy's mom actually sent me the song and I wouldn't listen to it. And we're like, what? We're just hearing all these layers of, what? Like,
what's he got to be thinking? Like, this song that I refuse to listen to is about me. I'm going to have to listen to it at some point.
Exactly. And so then we find out, we zoom in, because right next to the picture of the truck is a picture of Jared's flag and we zoom in and we find out that we write the song literally on the day that Jared died, like a couple of years later. And we're like, wait a minute, we wrote this. It's also too surreal.
Oh, you're kidding. I did not know that one.
Yeah. We just can't take it. Me and Connie and Jimmy are just hot mess express trying to talk to this guy. We're like, well, we're flying you to Nashville. Like, you got to come. And the number one party is like 2 weeks from now. We'll take care of all the arrangements. So he comes in and we throw the party. We get the plaques. He tells an incredible speech at the number one party. We're sitting at the fancy steak dinner. We have him later that night. And he's like, honey, you're just so kind. He's like, is this your first hit? And I was like, no, sir, I've had one other hit. It's you wouldn't probably know it. It's a pop song. And he said, what is it? I might know it. I've got grandkids. And I said, well, it's a song that was called The Climb. And he literally dropped his fork and said, he just started bawling. I said, what? He goes, I played that at Jared's funeral. And I said, what? Why? Because I'm like in Hannah, Montana.
He was a Miley Cyrus fan?
He goes, because he died on the mountain. He kept trying to climb this mountain to save, I wish I knew that soldier's name. And I said, he goes, yeah, the climb is everything to me. That song means everything to me because the mountain, the climb. And I was like, oh my God, this is too much.
I mean, okay, you wrote it on the day that he died.
Yeah.
And they play The Climb at it. Come on.
Yeah, about my granddaddy. Like, that's why grief, like, it just shows you it's all supposed to happen.
It's more crazy to think those things aren't connected than to think they are. It's so arrogant to say that, oh, that's just how it happens. No. It just can't be.
And then it went on and on. Lori McKenna was like this. Paul was a school teacher, and then that was her teacher when she was in school.
You're kidding.
Yeah, and that, like I said, the day that Jared died, and then one of my best friends dated one of the commanding officers, who's now a novelist, Tony Tatey. You might see him. He's on Fox News a lot. He's just a general, and he's a friend of mine. But he was like, Jared was a part of my regiment. Like, I found out all these things that I was supposed to write that song 100%, and it was supposed to be with Connie and Jimmy, and it's been the ultimate reward, that song.
I mean, that is it's funny because you write a lot of great songs, but then when it finds its way, I mean, there may be those great stories in a song that didn't find its way or something, but the idea how well that song is written, and I just remember hearing it and going, man, they really knocked it. You as I'm just listening in the morning, I'm not hearing the story, it's just coming on between two other songs, and I remember just thinking, man, whoever wrote the crap out of it. It's really, I got the picture. I get it in my head and it's good. And then as we started writing together and playing shows together and I get to hear the story, I'm like, oh my God, this is something really spiritual about this. And it's like all of the things that you went through, that you just talked about. I mean, all of them,
all
from your grandfather to your mom, the kid is, it leads you to the point where you're vulnerable enough to write that song, and you put the elbow grease work in to get to where you could express what you needed to express to get that on paper. I mean, it's a long road to that. And it's people have no idea.
You don't realize
it's not easy.
It's the bravery, the grit, the grind. I mean, there's so many ingredients. You know, a lot of these type podcasts, you know, would you tell a young songwriter, things like that? It's like, I think if you were to listen to my story, it's like, just write what you know. You know, that's kind of what I've had to learn. And that's where the good stuff, that's like where the marrow, the grit, like that's where the real, or for my career, at least, it's like when I can look back and almost go, this is that, this is that, this is this breakup, or this is that. The more I lean into what is the truth for me, that's when
the more special it is. It's an interesting thing because I've recently discovered, as I hear more and more people's stories, because your story feels like mine.
Yeah.
It's not the same details, but it's our friend Jay Joyce, you know, Jay, just a producer, he said to us a few years ago, and he was kidding, but kind of serious. He goes, never again am I working with anyone whose parents were supportive of their music.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like
I've got to have something messed up happen.
Well-adjusted, level, healthy kids.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell them to write about.
Or they're just writing about it. They're not living it. They're not.
And so you don't want to have to tell someone, well, go have a crappy experience so that you can write something. The truth is, those experiences are there.
Yeah.
It's coming. I always tell, if I'm talking to a group of young alcoholics or young addict kids that are working, or some parents or whatever. Yeah. The pain is coming. And it sounds negative, but it doesn't have to be negative. I'm these days, emotionally, spiritually, physically, trying to head the pain off at the pass. I'm going to go get the pain myself that I can get to avoid the later pain.
The one that's coming.
That's coming that I can. Or to make myself strong enough to be able to take that pain that's coming.
Yeah.
It's not that happy songs are bad. And it's not that they don't mean anything. And man, some of the things just make people have a better day. You have some of them as well. But if you want to be special, digging out of the hole is what really makes people feel something. And I'm so happy for those people that don't have grief yet, because it's coming. And if you don't have grief because you didn't have children are tough.
Yeah.
I don't tell you.
Totally,
I mean, it's hard when your children are okay.
Yeah.
Rarely, I have 3 sons and you have 3 kids. Yeah. Rarely do they all 3 have a great day on the same day.
Totally.
You know what
Those are like unicorn days.
Yeah. Unicorn days. You have it. So the idea of putting yourself in the position to be that hurt that often leads to the greatest love and the greatest heartbreak. So I find sadder to me those people that didn't maybe ever find the person that they were to spend their life with. Yeah. That they don't have the friends or the family or the children or the mom that was worth grieving over.
Absolutely.
Grief is the price of love.
It is. That's
true.
It's
like that you are, anytime you really love something, you have set yourself up, and to an ascending degree, how much you love them is how much grief is going to be there. And that's why the child, because honestly, I love my dad who's gone, but I don't love him like I love my son.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I love my son more. I mean, it's just, there's no comparison.
Of course.
And that is my favorite analogy for God. I'm like, I think we're much more okay than people think, because if God loves me anything close to what I love my son, we're good.
We're good.
He's going to keep walking me.
Absolutely.
He's not nearly he's looking for every way for me to win, not every way for me to lose. And any instruction he's giving me is for my benefit, not for my punishment.
Totally. Absolutely.
My view of God is so much better because of what I've been through, and I'm a better guy. How much do you think that, I mean, what if your parents stay married, your dad goes to AA 30 years ago? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think Jessi's written? God. All right. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't even really imagine like I'm providing or curating a life for my kids that I didn't have. So it's been really interesting to watch. Like, it's almost like an experiment. Like, what happens if you have a child that they get to go to, whatever, just a normal life, a normal childhood where I don't want to say normal, but just like
normal's cool. I mean,
healthy, structured, like I did all the things I didn't have. But you also go, but all that made me who I am and gave me the grit, that I have.
And it doesn't mean you want to put your kids in an unhealthy, it doesn't. It's not, I've been in a suburban in Texas with you on the way to a gig with maybe your husband or maybe two other songwriters, and we're going to a gig. And you're literally working it out with the principal on what the extra credit is and how you're going to drive the thing that next week. I'm like, man, she's determined. Like I'm not letting my kids.
I'm not letting them down.
Have the childhood that I had.
I want them to have the best opportunity, but also remember us sitting in the stands at a baseball game, my son's baseball game, and I was just kind of going through some hard child rearing, just you're worry sick that they're going down the wrong path or whatnot. I can't remember what was going on, but she was a wiser grandmother type, and she looked at me, she said, honey, why would you ever want to deny her? I think it was one of my daughters. She said, why would you ever want to deny her testimony one day? She's got to have something to stand up there and testify. And I thought, wow, that one statement changed my life because I have a testimony. You have a testimony. I'm so grateful that I have it. It's who I am. It's what I write songs about. And why would I deny her or any of my kids? They're going to go on and do great things with their life, no doubt in my mind. But if they didn't have a story or their winding path, you can't put the brakes and the bumpers on every single thing. Like I've had to really learn that.
That's the hardest. And I have gotten to experience what happens when they don't get to have their testimony.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's those things that I remember telling one of the last things, Sage wanted to take me to lunch before COVID happened because let me pay, you always pay. And so he paid and I tried to leave the tip and he's like, just let me pay for everything. And I said, you have the rest of your life to take me to lunch. And somehow he knew he didn't, have the rest of his life to take me to lunch. So I think about those things when someone, because I so agree with that comment. The truth is God didn't take him. He didn't take him, but he bought what he thought was a little bit of drugs. It was fentanyl. There's many, many stories just like that don't end in the death. There is a purpose to the story. There's a reason he went early. I believe it. I feel it. It's given my life purpose. I don't know what it's going to do for his brothers in the long run, but I can see it. Mm-hmm. It's not a wasted life. It's not a wasted experience.
No.
And he had a testimony. He really helped it. Cumberland Heights wanted to hire him when he had a couple of years of sobriety because of how influential he was with older guys. He didn't even want to go into the kids group because he liked being with the older guys.
Wow.
For some reason, I feel like Sage knew he was going to die early the whole time. I kind of had a premonition of it. Well, it's hard to admit. I did. So weird and hard to admit that.
Well, that's something I'm curious of, being a child of alcoholic, being it very heavily genetic in my life. Is there anything, markers or thoughts or things like with your kids, raising kids that could possibly be, just knowing that that's there. Is there anything that you would add to?
I will say this. You having the knowledge and experience of recovery, so people that have never dealt with it before, the best gift I ever gave to Sage or any of my children was becoming sober myself. That's the best gift I could give him. And not thinking that you're bad because of this. You have a disease because this is a disease. You have this bad. And the truth is Sage was a great sober guy. He had a year of being clean. Amazing. It was like God's gift to me was that year. I've said it on here before many times. It's just a gift to see the best. That you got that year. That's the kid I raised right there. It was amazing. COVID, I don't get too political. I think they're all full of crap. But this is the reaction to COVID. I'll never react with fear like that ever again in my life to anything. That separation from people and no meetings in the rooms separated a kid who really needed that at the time, got off track for a minute, got some fentanyl accidentally, died. So my son's one of the millions of victims to fentanyl. I I'm not saying that we did everything right, but we did a lot.
Yeah.
And I was sober the whole time. And he knew where to go when he had his problem. I did recognize character qualities in him from the time he was about 10 years old. And I told Michelle, he's an alcoholic. He was on stun. There's a lot of alcoholic behavior on my side of the family, and there's a lot of alcohol on Michelle's side of the family. And if you combine those two things,
it's just a recipe. Yeah.
It's a recipe for Sage either lit up a room or turned it dark when he walked in. I mean, he was a very, very, very charismatic.
Lee Solace was telling his story of his son, Aaron.
Yeah.
And just how, it is something that I very much try to not let be too much of a fear, but it's when like you
and you have charismatic children. Your son's one of them, especially. He's just very charismatic.
Absolutely.
I think 999 times out of 1,000, a kid like Sage doesn't have that night with that moron drug dealer that puts something deadly in that. And this guy recovers and he has his testimony. It's amazing. Would I take a swing at the plate at some other? Yeah, I would try some things differently. Yeah. But I sit in this room every month with a group of dads, and it's just almost like God has chosen you to have the struggles that you had so that you create the things that you have to give comfort to not just your family, but to all those other people.
Yeah.
God chose us to deal with this issue. It didn't mean he's put drugs into my son. He didn't. It wasn't his will for him to die, but I do believe there's a greater purpose.
I 100% agree.
And your purpose is it's with your own family in your home being the most important thing to you. I know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also, how far is it translated? All the way to Monty, So I don't want to shortchange the destiny. I don't want to shortchange God for what he had planned. And it doesn't mean that he planned for my kid to die. It doesn't mean that he did it. It doesn't mean it's his will. It still can be part of his plan. I think I was raised with a paranoia spiritually, and maybe I had a paranoia addictively, but I did let them know early on where I went on Tuesday mornings, why I was going there, and they had the information. And I'm so grateful to God for the year of sobriety we had with Sage, because I know what he was like. I know who he was as a man. Yeah. I got a full year as a man of who he was clean. Because even in high school and dealing with his things, it was back and forth. And it was, most kids sneak and smoke weed.
Yeah.
I just knew it was different.
You just knew.
And man, that year of clean was amazing. He was just like this excellent young man.
Yeah.
That everything that you wanted. And I know that. So it's easier for me to live with the loss having had that year. I think God gives us what we need to hold on to.
Yeah. Do you, as you get further away from, do you feel like you grieve sometimes the memories? Like I grieve that cause I'm 20 years now, like it's harder to remember my mom's voice or like her, used to really starts fading and you're like, oh, I just wish I could hear her voice. I wish I could, see like I'm thinking about that year you had.
Yeah.
That you can see it right now.
Yeah.
But 30 years from now, 40, it gets harder and harder.
Yeah, that's probably the toughest part.
This is a grief podcast. So like, to me, that's something that that grieve have to grieve.
Yeah.
Is like that once their memory becomes truly a memory, and memories fade.
Like the smell. He had a smell and his touch. He had a big bear hugs. It's just hard to. My middle son is older than Sage was when he died. My youngest son, who was 6 years younger than Sage, is 20, and Sage was 21. So at some point, like it's a little strange for that. Like he would be 25 years old right now. Like, wow, what would he be doing? And he was dating a girl I think he probably would have married. It is. I honestly, sometimes I feel like I communicate with Sage more than I do the other guys, just because it's daily. Yeah. It's so daily.
It is.
And it's more spiritual. I just see him sitting there with Jesus. Everything I do, not everything I say, but I think about it. If it's a decision to make, I still say dumb shit, like the word shit. But every decision that I make, I try to, that means something. I try to think, okay, how is this going to honor Sage or not?
That's so good.
And by doing that, I think he's sitting there with Jesus. So I kind of try to do the same thing. It doesn't mean that I don't, use bad language or write a drinking song, because I'm going to do both of those.
Yeah.
But the big decisions when it comes to like, is this about me? Mm-hmm. And I have been able to, my relationship with my brother as a coworker, and we've been able to kind of reset some things, and me go, I need to do some things, you need to do some things, and be happy for each other.
Yeah.
And in my career to go, I care about this. I don't care about this anymore. I do care about the quality. I don't really care about the numbers so much.
Yeah.
And to separate things. And so in a way, my relationship with Sage is not a memory. It's a daily thing. But yes, the other things, the smell, I still have this wallet in my dresser. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's still, there's those things will, that's tough.
It's tough, especially with kids that are like, want to know about grandma, or, it's like you try to preserve their memory, but it's like, it's a hard one.
I do sit and think he would be proud of me where I am. Sure. He'd be proud of his mom, where she is. Probably, I was going to ask you, is it hard that your mom didn't get to see your success?
And my kids.
Yeah. Your ultimate success. One. Yeah.
It was definitely hard to be a mother without a mother. Because mothering is, especially when you're like, I didn't grow up with like brothers and sisters or babysitting or all the things that, it was, I definitely had to learn kind of on my own, and
then twins.
And twins came. Exactly. Cow. And so there's been some frustration of like, when I think of some of my darker grieving moments of like, why can't I get a little break here? But then there's always been an angel or a God, something come through that's like, no, I'm going to provide this, always, or like a blessing that's come with that. But I just, for all the people out there with that knows, it's just like the loss of a child. It's like there's a motherless thing. Mm-hmm. It's different when you don't have a mom. And like for years you do your grandparents babysit? Do you have family help? You always having to, my mom died when I was, whatever.
And how do I give that enough energy and story without derailing everybody's
And I think that's
night?
why I've, till today, Grace just kind of, it's like, and there's a time for that. I've been plowing through life and just family and getting my career to where I want it. And I do think that this new phase of my grief work, which is sometimes I feel a little like embarrassed to say 20 years later, I'm still, but it's only because I probably put my head down for so long that now I'm in a new place of like, okay. And I wanted to share one neat story. When I said earlier that, and this might play to the hardest thing you've had to do, because I've had a lot of them. But when I was like, y'all wanted me to do the podcast, I was like, oh boy, how am I going to do this? How am I going to face that? And a friend of mine was losing her dad, and he went into hospice. And this is where I was saying God has kind of been prepping me for all of this. She was like, I would love for you to come visit. And I was like, yeah, I'll drop some coffee off. You know what I mean? Because I don't do funerals very well. I don't do hospitals very well. Definitely don't do anything hospice related well. But I was like, yeah, I'll drop some coffee off, because he was passing in West Haven and it's close to where I live. And so I got some Starbucks one morning and just was like going to put them on the
Don't
front
look
steps.
at it. Walk in the room.
There's not, and so she was like, first day, she was like, that was, so kind. And I was like, gosh, there was something itching at me about it, because it was a long time. It took him a long time to pass. So a couple days later, I was like, okay, I'll bring you coffee again. So this time we sat on the steps and talked, for a long time. And her mom even came out and said, hey, do you need to use the restroom or anything? I was like, no.
I'll pee in the yard.
I'm good. I'm not stepping foot in that house.
Yeah.
And so this goes on. So like a couple days later, it's time. Like he's going to pass today. It was the day, we knew it was going to be this day or the next day. And she was like, yeah, it's tough over here. And I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling her pain. And I was like, what can I do for you? Like, I know what you're living. And you know how we all, when you're in the club, you have a special heart for somebody going through it. And I know what she's facing. So I was like, well, I'm coming. I'm bringing coffee. And I'm here. I'm actually off today. You know, I was off that day. And I was like, I'm here for whatever you need. She's like, cool. Maybe you should just throw your guitar in the car. Like, she's kind of she kind of said this laughingly. And I was like, yeah, that's real cute, Brooke, whatever. And so I get in the car and I was like, damn it, I have to go get my guitar. I have to go get that guitar. So I was like, put my Jeep back in park.
That is unbelievable.
And here's what I said.
How different it is when you go just talk and when you go.
And I said, I'm just going to take my guitar. I'm just going to take my guitar. Because when she said it kind of laughingly, I felt like, no.
Don't even tell her it's in the trunk.
God was like, you're taking your guitar. You said you wanted grief work.
Yeah,
we're doing it.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I put my guitar in the car, pick up the Starbucks, go out there. And this is the moment where I got the guitar, I got the coffees, but I'm like, do I take my guitar in? Like, I can leave my guitar. She'll never know I brought it. And I was like, you've come this far. You just take your guitar. You just take the guitar, leave it on the porch. And when she saw me with the guitar, she just broke down and crying. And she was like, so grateful. And I was like, shame on you, Jessi. You've got this gift of a voice. You've got the voice of healing, and you've got the gift of knowing exactly what this family's going through.
It's hard.
They're sitting around his bed right now, you know? And it was a lot of work I've done of like putting on that guitar and walking in there and not walking in there, not the girl that's so callous that I'm just going to go do this gig.
Yeah.
We know how to do those. I've played some hard stuff. I've had to play for the Wounded Warriors. I've had to play for Paul Monty. I've done crazy things. But this was the day that I was like, no, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna sit at his bedside and I'm gonna share my gift of music to this family. But I mean, it was just so weird, like, 'cause I've like dodged the scene, the smell, the sounds of dying, death. But what was interesting is when I walked in, it was like so familiar too, like. Oh,
I did this.
Yeah, I know this. And kind of mad at myself for not doing it more. Like, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it was familiar. What was really bad was for the people sitting there who never lived this. I've lived this. So, and I see this being, this human laying in a bed, this person that means so much to all of this family. And I sat down and I played several songs for them. And it was really neat to watch, be on the other side of it and just be in a very healthier spot than I was 20 years ago. But to watch Brooke, you know, and her mom and him even kind of, you know, his spirit was close to the end, but just to see what music can do and when it fills up a room. And it was powerful.
I'm sure they didn't cry at all.
Yeah. I mean, there was no tears shed. I cried, they cried, and he left maybe, you know, a couple of hours after I left. Yeah. So it was cool. It was really cool.
Those are the things that when you're finished with those, you're like, why don't I do that every day? But it's so hard to get out of the house with holding the guitar. I mean, that's just the thing. Like, I can stop by. I'll do some work. I'll buy groceries. I'll spend money. I'll put them on your doorstep. Don't make me go in and relive that thing.
Oh, I was like,
you know, but God, so I know what that was. It's like, put your guitar in the car. It's like, oh.
It's like, but then it's like another thing of like, God has given me the gift of music, of a voice, and the gift of grief.
Yeah. Well, you got the double whammy. I think I've learned a lot today, by the way. Thank you for this. There's a little bit of reserve. Like,
yeah,
I'm kind of out on the front end of let's just say it, I'm at the risk of being offensive to people my whole life, a little bit too much. And reserve would not be something that people would use to describe my personality at all. Right. And there's some, sometimes I feel like my job is to pull those things out of someone like you. It's got some reserve. Like, oh yeah, I know Jessi's got a whole bag of it.
I've got a bag of stuff.
I'm getting ready to pull it out.
Yeah.
Which might be my gift or whatever, but there is a balance. I think it's a good part. What you did was the right thing. It was the amazing thing. And it's almost always good to say, knows a complete sentence as well, though. Like when you know that it's right. And I tell this story about when at the Sage's funeral, I wrote something up to say, and the priest said, why don't you make 2 copies? Because everyone thinks they want to speak and they really don't, and they just skip it. So make 2 copies. And then right about the time it's time to speak, you point to me if you want me to say it, and you point to yourself if you want to say it. And it was like the last thing in the whole funeral. It's a long Catholic funeral. I walked in the room, headed down the aisle, and there's a big picture of Sage, and he's looking right at me, and he's going, get your ass up there and say it. And so before the first song was played, I looked at the priest. He was a great friend of mine. He's an amazing guy in recovery. And I just looked at him and I pointed to myself, and he's like, it's pretty early. That's an hour away from now. And I'm like, no.
Got time.
It was literally life-changing at that moment, because I'm like, this is the moment I either accept this mantle that I've been given, what Jimmy Lee Solace would say, been trusted with. Absolutely. We've been entrusted with this, or I take the easy route. At the same time, I've also had to learn, no, this is not going to serve me or anyone else in the room. It's just saying yes for the sake of saying it. So I've learned how to say no, but I've also learned how to say yes in difficult situations, and a lot more of, say, running to the fire instead of running away from it.
I think that's good. And that's something that, like, now that I've opened the door, there's gonna be times that's like, no, I don't need to do that.
Hell, this is
amazing. Thank you so much.
I'm super grateful for you. You're a great friend. You're one of the greatest songwriters and singers ever to walk around. So that everyone knows that. I don't have to say that, but you're a great friend. You have been. Thanks for doing this. I know it was hard.
It's good.
And I love your family. Your husband's the coolest guy on earth, and your kids are awesome. And you're just.
They love you.
Hearing this, it like makes me so happy for them, because they're getting all of you.
Yeah.
And there is something about we do make up for what we lacked. And then sometimes overshoot it. But man, what a great story of like redemption. And I just think of what my behavior would have been if I was putting that.
I mean, I definitely should be in a trailer park somewhere, but I'm here, and I feel like, it's pretty obvious why.
Yeah. I mean, it is. There are a lot of people that have effect on someone, and it's hard to be seen one person at a time and what the ripple might be. But I mean, you got a couple songs where it's obvious. Like, you literally have given the world a gift, and it doesn't mean, unless you have to pat yourself on the back to say that, but like, you've been gifted the experience, the grief, the talent, and then the timing have all come around, and you've literally written some things that change the world in a better way, and it's awesome. I'm happy to hear it.
Hopefully we'll write one of those too.
Yes. You're the best. Thank you for doing this. Love you.
Love you.
All righty.
Woo! I did it.
Without breaking down too much. You were awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to the Good Grief, Good God Show. As always, the Good Grief, Good God Show is brought to you in loving memory of Sage Michael.